Because God is not going to bless wickedness. That's why. And we need to turn back to God in our own hearts, in our own families, in our own churches, and then we need to go out and preach unto the lost and turn this thing around. And you know what? We are turning it around in a lot of people's lives. And we are, focusing at this church on that which is spiritual, not that which is political. Right. Amen. But you got a whole bunch of churches that sit there and say like, well, the biggest thing we need to do is change that law that stops us from endorsing political candidates. Yeah, that'll fix everything if you guys can get even more Republican than you already are. And just preach even more political sermons about how great, whatever Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh told you. That's really what we need. Now look, obviously I don't believe in that law, but you know what? At least that law keeps these guys from just running their stupid mouths about that even more than they already do. You know what I mean? And like I said, I don't agree with that law. It should be repealed. But I'm looking on the bright side of that law, that at least we don't just have to listen to them tell us how wonderful all these scumbag politicians are all the time. Because that's what they wish they could do. Oh, I wish I could talk more about the election. Why don't we talk more about why your butt wasn't out soul winning last Saturday? Why don't we talk about that, Pastor? Amen. Huh? Why don't we talk about the fact that your deacons don't go out soul winning? Why don't we talk about that? Why don't we talk about the fact that you're so scared you won't even preach against the weirdest sin in the whole world and in the whole Bible, sodomy? You won't even mention it. Why don't we talk about what a coward you are? Why don't we talk about how lazy you are? Why don't we talk about what a joke you are? Donald Trump's going to make America great again. And they're just salivating over Mike Pence, telling you he's like Daniel the prophet, telling you he's like King David, telling you he's like Joseph or whatever. I mean, look, these people are missing the boat. You must turn the nation from sin, or it's going to go down the toilet. That's what the Bible says in every chapter of the book of Jeremiah. He said here, look, I'll cleanse them from their iniquity, whereby they've sinned against me. I'll pardon all their iniquities, whereby they've sinned and whereby they've transgressed against me. That's the problem, sin. Why did the judgment come in the first place? Verse number 5. Why is it filled with dead bodies? Look halfway through the verse. Whom I've slain in mine anger and in my fury, and for all whose wickedness I've hid my face from this city. You know why God's not going to bless America? Because of fornication. Right. Because of fornication. Because of people shacking up like alley cats with just whoever and being active physically, sexually active at age 13, 14, 15, 16. God looks down and he calls that the filthiness of fornication. Right. God looks down and he sees all the divorce and remarriage and he says it's adultery. Yep. God looks down and he sees all the drunkenness and all the Bud Dumber consumption and all the Coors and all the MGD. You know what? He looks at it and that's why he's mad today. He's angry. That's right. He looks down, he sees the abortion. He looks down, he sees the covetousness, the greed, the selfishness, the laziness, the complacency of God's people. The pastor who's more interested in the 401k and he's more interested in driving the Cadillac and living in the mansion than being a prophet of God and maybe spending the night in jail. And God looks down, and God is not going to bless that. He can't bless that. So why don't we preach about that for a while? Why don't we turn this nation, first of all, to the gospel, and then why don't we take God's people, and why don't we teach them to observe all things whatsoever Christ commanded us? Amen. Everything, not part of it, but everything that Christ commanded us. We need to teach them against every sin in the Bible. Every sin in the Bible, we need to preach against it. Amen. And by the way, on Sunday morning, not just on Sunday night and Wednesday night. Right. I'm sick of this program that says, well, on Sunday morning, we keep it soft for the new people. These new people, we need to light them up. Amen. The Sunday morning glories need the hard preaching even more than the Wednesday night crowd. I mean, the Sunday morning glories are the ones who need it the most. Let's not handle them with kid gloves. Let's take the gloves off and let's get up and preach hard on Sunday morning, and let's turn people away from wickedness, and let's get right with God, and let's set an example for others, other churches, other believers, and let's do something that actually matters with our lives instead of just putting our hope in this bruised reed.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's like, woe unto them that they lean on Egypt for help. They're looking to the worldly people to fix it. And look, he said that to them at this exact time. In the book of Jeremiah, Nebuchadnezzar, everybody, let's get this in context. Nebuchadnezzar is coming down on them. In Jeremiah chapter 33, Jeremiah is sitting in the prison court. And while he's in prison, the city is surrounded by the Babylonian army. And you know what they're doing? Instead of turning to the Lord, instead of asking Jeremiah, will you make intercession for us? Will you tell us what sin to get out of our life? Will you teach us the Bible? You know what they're doing? They're sending to Egypt for help. He said, you're like basically leaning on Egypt for help is like leaning on the bruised reed. So it's like those plants that grow by the side of the river, the tule. Who knows what I'm talking about? I know that word because I used to go to piano lessons on Tule Court. That was the address of my piano teacher. And I asked my mom, what does tule mean? And she told me that the tule was this plant that, when you go to the river and there's those stalks by the side of the river, and we have them on the Salt River, okay? Now, I'm not talking about bamboo that's actually firm. I'm talking about these reeds and tules and things that grow by the side of the river. And then have you ever noticed when they get real wet and old, they'll get darker, right? The fresh one will be like a yellow. And then there's the bruised reed where it's starting to get darker brown. It's just so soft and limp, it's like a spaghetti noodle. He's saying basically, you're leaning on Egypt for help. You're just kind of like, oh yeah, we got this covered. I mean, Donald Trump's going to make America great again. Right? Instead of leaning on the Lord. Right? I mean, instead of leaning on something that can actually hold you up. Look, God's a rock. Look, if the Lord's at your right hand, you'll never be moved.
Right.
Or you can just lean on this bruised reed of politics. This bruised reed of the world, of Egypt, saying like, well, here's how we're going to fix it, and it's something other than the Lord. I don't even care what it is. If it's other than cleaning up our nation spiritually and morally, it's not a solution that I have any interest in.
Amen.
Why? Because I want to stand for the rest of my life. I want to be standing and having done all to stand.
Amen.
And I want to stand and be strong in the Lord in the power of His might. I don't want to just lean on, well, let's see if the politician keeps his promises. Let's see. I think this time he's really going to do what he said he's going to do. And you say, well, why don't you just do that one time, Pastor Anderson? Why do you keep doing it over and over again? Isn't one time enough? Why do you keep doing it? Doesn't that hurt? Well, here's my question. Why do you keep doing it, America?
Right.
Why don't I do it once for every time you've done it? Putting all your hope in wickedness. Putting all your hope in Egypt. Leaning on the bruised reed. I don't want to do it that many times because I'm going to become a bruised reed up here. I'm going to get bruised. I keep crashing. I'm going to be red, black, and blue by the time I'm done falling. It's that God's saying that's what you're doing. When you don't realize that the problem's a spiritual problem, and when you don't look to the Lord for your solution.